Community. This man is kind and gentle, but has a powerful message. So full of God's love. And I am so glad that I know this guy, really and truly. And I'm pleased that he said yes to speaking at Ultreya tonight. I know his schedule is very busy. And I'm also excited that those of you who don't know Brother Bill will get to know him tonight. So that's a wonderful thing. And my extreme pleasure to introduce Brother Bill Cawley.
Thank you. I guess I better unmute. I'm a brother of the Sacred Heart. I live now in St. Stanislaus Parish in Maspeth, Queens, with two brothers. We are a formation team awaiting two brothers from the Philippines, so we're actually not too busy right now. Let me see what's going on here. Okay. They will be preparing for one for first vows and one for final vows in our province. I made the 34th men's Cursillo. That was back in 1972. And soon after, my sister and brother-in-law made Cursillo. And then my younger two brothers and my sister made the Christian Awakening. And about 15 years later, my mother made her weekend after many years of volunteering at the mailing team, for the mailing team at the Cursillo Center in Brooklyn. So who are the people in your life who you enrolled in the Cursillo? You have anyone else in mind right now? Before the Cursillo, I was a brother for 6 years. And coming up to this time when I had to decide, will I make final vows? A group of our brothers had attended Brothers Cursillo. I believe it was in Maryland. And they spoke of really, really experiencing the love of God. I was so involved in high school teaching and so busy with extracurricular activities at the time that I didn't have much time to stop and consider what the love of God was. Never mind experiencing it. Yeah, I went to Mass each day and I attended prayers, but meditation time and inspirational reading time turned out to be nap times. And retreat days were basically rest days. So hearing about a retreat that would connect me to an experience of the love of God, symbolized by the Sacred Heart, I'm a brother of the Sacred Heart, that really attracted me. And the brothers who attended also said what a good time they had. How can you lose? What was your main reason for going on the Cursillo? Who invited you? A couple of brothers swept me off to Humboldt Street. And as they greeted some men as we entered, another guy took my suitcase and skirted off. And I scooted after him. I wondered, where's that going? I was sharing a room with three others, something I hadn't done since, I think, my sophomore year in college. I returned and my brother friends were gone. And I was now with like 60 to 70 strangers. And I sort of fit in and the talks began. I started analyzing them. I was trying to guess what books these good speakers were using. And the guys at my table were really being touched. And at Palanca time, the guys got real emotional. You know, I did get letters from a couple of the brothers, but I guess I was started to see that maybe this was going to be an intellectual and communal experience that I should enjoy. The masses were great. And I loved the hugs. And so many of guys, they expressed such freedom after the penance service. Saturday night came, led by Brother Jude Byrne, a Franciscan, and our table was so affirmed, and so was I, that some of them even broke down. Well, in those days, everybody in the room seemed to be smoking. I wasn't. And they saw me wiping tears. They got all excited, but it was the smoke. I didn't start feeling anything yet. But I was loving the weekend. And maybe seeing others experience the love of God was the way I was going to have the experience. Then on Sunday morning, Brother Jude gave the Life in God Friendship talk, and he aimed it right at me. Well, probably here. Everything all of a sudden came into place. Every talk took on more meaning, and I was opening to God's friendship. The protections started fading away. The walls started breaking down. And I felt God's love right to my core. And my new table of brothers finally saw me emotional as I tried to explain to them what the talk meant to me. What did you hear God say on your Cursillo? What did you hear God say to you on your Cursillo? I would open myself more and more to praying to accept God's love, really experiencing it. And I would stay in touch with this Cursillo movement. My fourth day was an awakening to the realization of God's love in a great variety of ways. And I was seeing I have to make efforts to be aware in new ways each day. At first, I thought getting back for reunions and attending closings would keep me strong in my resolve. And others saw the difference in me. So my best friend and my family attended and loved the Cursillo. And I was asked to be table team and give the ideals talk. And within a year, busyness was again eating into my resolve. I was now ministering in the South Bronx. I was teaching grammar school, leading a youth group, setting up and mentoring youth retreats, being part of groups for the improvement of the area for the good of the poor. There were so many needs and so many wonderful ways to help. This was the time of almost continuous fires in the South Bronx. We watched from our front window and saw abandoned buildings burning. But at the school, our faculty, led by the Dominican sisters, formed such a supportive community. The parents trusted us in school and after school with their children. So we added drama and more sports programs to our day. Most of the children, if they didn't attend these programs, they would go home and have to stay at home. The parents was just so afraid of letting them out. So we fulfilled a great need and gave so much time. And yes, I was asked to do the Christian Community Action Talk. My prayer life, though, was in shambles. I attended Mass. There were no celebrations except for the times when I was at Ultreyas or reunions. And saying community prayers was just an obligation fulfilled. Somehow I lost the ability to be searching and accepting in prayer. It was just duty fulfilled. Has busyness ever disrupted your relationship with God? Or disrupted your relationship with others? In the midst of this all, I realized I was in love with one of the teachers at the school. And she had just accepted being engaged to another guy. Now, this surprised us all. We were a pretty close-knit group. And in a very cowardly way, I was kind of too busy to go and see her. I gently challenged her in a letter, which she opened when her partner was present. He read it too. Not a good scene, and it threw me for a loop. Is this the way I treat somebody I love, am I that insensitive? Well, I got over to see my sister and cried my eyes out. I dragged myself to spiritual direction with Father Jim and finally realized, although I did not choose to see if she would accept if we should get married, but I had to make amends. Finally, I asked for forgiveness in person for my cowardliness and my insensitivity. How have good friendships and spiritual direction helped you in times of crisis? Then my younger brother, not knowing much about my life except that I was too busy, introduced me to transcendental meditation. And at about the same time, the brother who was our leader in the New York area went on a retreat with Basil Pennington doing centering prayer. And it was the key. You know how some people said after the Cursillo, prayer all of a sudden became more interesting? And how improved those priests' homilies became. Well, that's what happened to me through centering prayer. Everything was brighter again, and I opened to new prayer experiences. I really took spiritual direction seriously and allowed for much more growth. I learned through the Charismatic Reunion, the Focolare movement, Al-Anon, and finally an interfaith community based on making a difference workshops to empower ministers for all faiths. I allowed all these different groups to add to my spirituality. Has any new form of prayer enlivened your life in God's friendship? Backing up a bit, this centering prayer enabled me to say yes to being on the Cursillo spiritual team for young adults, and eventually leaving my beloved ministry in the South Bronx and so many wonderful people who helped me grow so much, and I joined the St. Paul staff full time. I spent 7 wonderful years there, and I was asked for my brother's community to leave New York and help young men become brothers in New Orleans. And a few years later, I was back in New York and heard the calling to be among the poor again. I was happy teaching high school and living with the brothers, being very comfortable, and my spiritual director was sick and tired of me and my struggles of, oh, I think God is calling me to something different, but where? And should I give this up? I'm so good at it, and I'm comfortable, and why take the risk? Over and over again, she heard it, and finally she said, well, enough. Maybe you got to pray differently and see if this is a real calling. I grappled it out with her and found out that, what I wasn't doing, and it became very challenging to me and still is today, was to request directly to God. For me, I simply prayed. It came down to this. God, you're calling me. Make it clear. And I want joy. So that became sort of my mantra for a while. And then opportunities opened up. Sister Helen was opening Tabor Retreat Center and wanted it supported by a prayer community. I hopped on board since I too needed to pray differently to support my venture. I gave up my teaching assignment and sought a ministry. St. John's Home in Rockaway needed, it's a home for young men who need guidance usually after court appearances. And they needed a guidance counselor, and they accepted my credentials. And New York State cut budgets, and they had to do away with that position. I volunteered at an AIDS hospice center, and they asked me to work with them, and then the cuts hit them. Finally, I took an internship with the Rockville Center Diocese Prison Ministry, and after 10 weeks was asked if I would join their staff part-time. All of a sudden, I was perfect. I could be part-time in the jail ministry and part-time at Tabor House. Wonderful. And it was clear and was very joyful. When did you have to pray differently? Joyful at jail? Well, you can see how Tabor House would have been joyful, but at jail? Yes, it was demanding. And I could never just give like I did in the South Bronx, because I know I'd burn out again. I now knew I must let each person I encounter contribute to me. People like that. People like to contribute. I didn't go around as Guru Bill. I was Brother Bill. And I wanted to know what these men learned from the New Testament, from the Quran, from the Hebrew scriptures, or for any inspirational book they read. It was common for me to leave so enriched I couldn't process it all. And I did take the opportunities to introduce all these men, especially the minors, to God's yearning to forgive them. Yeah, like in the prodigal son. Some men even started doing centering prayer after I led them when I had the opportunity to lead a worship service. What joy comes to you when you allow others to contribute to you? What openings happen when you listen this way? This led to ministry in Syracuse. I even directed jail ministry there for a couple of years. Then on to mentoring individuals and groups in interfaith leadership for transformation. Then I coordinated a senior volunteer outreach program in a high school in New Jersey and did campus ministry there too. And then I headed back south to Baton Rouge to tutor in a high school equivalency program. All these ministries offered me great joy, and I'm learning more and more to accept. How have you accepted God's invitation to serve? I would be remiss not to mention the importance of prayer groups in my life. Right after my Cursillo, I accepted an invitation to Ascension Parish in Queens to a prayer group. People from all over came, all kinds of people, very sophisticated people dressed up in suits, and right down to your regular people from right around the neighborhood. And there were lots of hugs and singing. But the great joy to me was the sharing after the readings. We did have Mass when priests were available. But the sharing after the readings, the honesty, the transparency, the vulnerability, the inclusivity led me to deep sharing. Then I had to move away, so I attended only sporadically. And when in the South, I only came up for Christmas vacation and attended the New Year's midnight prayer. Well, most recently, it's been the New Year's Eve 4 p.m. prayer. You know how it is when you get our age. And we still pray together on occasion. And since the Christian Awakening days, I belong to another prayer group. And we met once a month for a long time, and they still meet once a month. The pandemic actually drew me back in from South via Zoom. We are so supportive of each other's spirituality. And again, I am so free to share my struggles and inspirations. Now, I know I didn't do justice. I barely mentioned Tabor House. There was just too much to incorporate. But, you know, after 50 years, it's a bit much trying to get everything in one talk. But I do have to say, my brothers' community, the Brothers of the Sacred Heart, provide prayer every day, communal prayer, and they call us to attend Mass every day. And we're mandated to go on a yearly retreat. Can you imagine? It's our rule. We have to take about a week a year. What a gift that is. How has community helped you to open more to God? Now I'd like you all to join me in about 3 minutes of centering prayer. There's simple guidelines. 1, you intend to be with God, God who dwells in the depths of your very being. 2, you have a word that whenever anything comes to your mind, whenever you're aware of anything, you just simply use the word and allow it to bring you back to being with God. So I invite you to close your eyes, sit so that the chair supports you. Intend to be with God. And as the psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Now gently and easily open your eyes and stretch your body a little. I guess that's more necessary when we do it for 20 minutes, but that's the way you usually end. Thank you.